Welcome into the KSL Sports Front page. I'm your host, Ben Anderson. You can find me on Twitter at Ben's Hoops. You can read me at KSLSports.com, as well as my co-host today, Mitch Harper. Find him on Twitter at Mitch_Harper. And again, read his BYU coverage at KSLSports.com. You can also catch him on KSL News Radios on Saturdays on Cougar Sports Saturday. Mitch, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be on board with you, Ben. A lot to get to with BYU, the Jazz, so going to be a lot of fun today.
Yeah, kind of a weird. I mean, the pandemic in general, it's not good for anybody, but it's been bizarrely fruitful for BYU athletics. Where the football team's having the best season they've had in. What would you say? This is the best season in 19 years when they started. What was it, 11-0?
Yeah, I would say 19 years. 2001 we started out 12-0. Definitely, BYU has been a beneficiary of a pandemic. They're one of the few athletic departments that's really had success throughout all this.
And then what about on the basketball side? That is our top story right now at KSLSports.com. They're going to play St. John's now coming up in the second game of the Legends Classic. This is just a goofy situation. And actually, it's fun. If you're kind of into this, I don't know how many people played 3-on-3 basketball or tournament basketball ever in their life. You didn't know who you were playing next, and you just kind of showed up, and there was a name on the bracket, and that's who you played. That's what's going on across sports right now.
It's true, Ben. And I think that a lot of Cougar fans wish that a football game could come together as quick as this BYU St. John's game did today, because, BYU football, obviously, they've been trying so hard to get a game. They wanted that Miami game badly. They were talking on the phone all weekend with the ACC and Miami to try and make a game happen on the football field. That, of course, didn't come to fruition. But BYU basketball kind of taking the same approach where they're willing to play anyone, anytime, anywhere. And Mark Pope has instilled a lot of confidence with that style of scheduling. And they'll play the Johnnies coming up on Wednesday. They'll have USC tomorrow at 12:30 on KSL News Radio, and you'll have coverage on KSL Sports. So a big stretch of games for BYU, because you think, first week of December coming up, not really thinking tournament resume, but when you're not in a power conference, you're a mid-major program or mid-major conference, you're going to be thinking about the tournament resume. So this week is going to be huge for BYU to have that chance against USC, the Johnnies, and then Utah State coming up a little bit later this weekend.
And should be a good opportunity for some wins. Utah State, they might be a bubble team by the end of the season. We'll see. They certainly added some talent this year, and we know they've gotten Amias Queta. So that's a good team, and that would be a good win. And St. John's is traditionally a pretty good program as well. So good for BYU getting this opportunity, especially after getting an opportunity to go out and extend the coach just a couple of days ago. So it's just been a great season for BYU so far. I know it's early. I know we're not too far into this, but they've done well. They've looked good. On the football front, Mitch, what is next? Do you have an inkling of what's coming up for BYU?
I think the hope this weekend, from what I gather, is potentially the Pac-12. If the Pac-12 has any sort of openings that emerge, BYU will take the game. They wanted the Washington game. We all know that's been beaten to a dead horse now. But if a Pac-12 game opens up, say Wednesday or Thursday, maybe BYU then slides in. They did practice today. The football team did. Are actually currently wrapping up practice here in the next hour or so. So they're going to practice as though that maybe there's potentially going to be a game that comes together in short order, because I think that's kind of got to be the expectation if you're going to get a game with the Pac-12. We saw that with San Diego State and Colorado last week, and that came together 48 hours before kick. So I think that's going to be the back end of the week will be where you kind of maybe see if BYU does add a game, and that'll be with the Pac-12 conference if it can happen. But yeah, BYU tried Miami. They tried to get Army, West Point again on the schedule, Marshall. Just nothing has been – there hasn't been much interest, I think, for teams to play BYU. But then also I think the power conferences are not really – there's not much of an appetite to just say, here, BYU will give you this stage, and then have an opportunity to put your program in a position where you can take home a $4 million payday, where everyone's athletic departments are hurt and financially impacted by the pandemic. I don't think there's much of an interest to give another non-power school an opportunity to get a big payday. We'll obviously see more what happens this week with the playoff rankings tomorrow and what happens there. But it's been a fascinating year for BYU, even if they don't go to the New Year's Six, or playoff is long gone, of course. But And if they only play one more regular season game, this has been a huge year for BYU football. I think it's going to be a pretty good year for BYU basketball too. So I think Cougar fans should just they look back on 2020 on their personal lives. It's probably been a rough year, for everyone. We've all been impacted by the pandemic, but on the fields of play, BYU sports has been rolling, the likes of which this fan base has been craving for so many years now, it feels like.
And for sure, BYU has one more game scheduled that's coming up on the 12th against San Diego State, correct?
Yeah, and that got a kick time announced earlier today. It's going to be an 8 o'clock kick on ESPN2, which first ever home game in December at LaVell Edwards Stadium. So if fans do get the opportunity to go to that one, no announcement yet on the status of fans, but that's going to probably be as cold of a game as we've seen in Provo ever to be played there. 8 o'clock kick, but that's probably a good thing for San Diego State. Is a little bit more used to the warmer climates near Montezuma Mesa. So BYU's got at least one guaranteed game, but they'll stay ready to go and on call for any sort of opportunity that maybe poses itself, because I think they will jump on any opportunity, because I don't think they want to let the narrative emerge this time around that they're ducking teams, because that's what kind of took place last time when the Washington game was being reported as an opportunity.
Mitch, and then they're having other positive storylines coming out of the NFL, and we've got that here at the top as well, where Taysom Hill has been the starter now for the Saints over the last 2 weeks. They've won both games. He struggled a little bit more yesterday, but certainly nothing like what Denver was dealing with.
Yeah, that was the craziest thing to watch yesterday, man. I mean, 2020 is just so bizarre in so many ways. We're seeing the Broncos trot out a former wide receiver, former P5 quarterback, and it kind of highlighted how much it takes to become an NFL quarterback, like a Power 5 QB for the Broncos, and now a wide receiver. He couldn't complete a pass, and Taysom Hill is obviously having his growing pains as a starting quarterback, but Sean Payton still believes in him. And it seems like, Taysom's going to get every opportunity to be that next guy with the Saints. It was interesting. I was talking with David Nixon on Cougar Sports Saturday, a former BYU linebacker, an NFL linebacker over the weekend on KSL News Radio. And he was saying that this is critical time for Taysom, because if he knows this is a chance for him to potentially get a new extension. I know he got a new deal this offseason, but this is the chance to really solidify himself as the future star quarterback, because I think after this year, Drew Brees is going to be done. He's going to go in the booth for Sunday Night Football. So this is Taysom's chance to really lay claim that he is the future star quarterback. And so far, 2 games, 2 starts, no passing touchdowns yet, but he's obviously shown that elite running ability, which makes him such a unique asset. But I do think the passing game will continue to get better. But, Denver's defense, very good. They faced some pretty good defense through the first 2 weeks. But huge opportunity, though, for Taysom to really financially and just his status in the league and with the Saints to be that clear-cut number 1 guy going forward. So the next week or 2 will continue to be huge for Taysom.
Yeah, it sounds like he's probably got at least 2 more weeks starting. It sounds like Drew Brees might be able to come back against the Chiefs coming up on that game before Christmas on the 20th. They play the Falcons, who actually looked great yesterday against the Raiders. Kind of surprisingly, they've been pretty bad this season. And then the Eagles, who are terrible. So opportunity for Taysom. If you go and say, hey, I'm 4-0 in these starts that I had, maybe he isn't the future quarterback for the Saints. Maybe he is, but somebody else will take a chance on him. Who was it? Was it Matt Flynn who ended up getting all those deals? Not too long ago, he had one. What was it? Week 16. He had
Yep.
Yeah, he had one great game with the Packers and turned it into was like $30 million with the Seahawks. So good for him. Good for Taysom. Hopefully, he can make a bunch of money. I know he's certainly proven me wrong throughout his career. I mean, starting an NFL quarterback right now, that's as good as you can get when it comes to playing in the pros. All right, other big storylines coming up, Mitch. I've written about this a little bit. Utah Jazz are going big while the rest of the NBA is shrinking. The Jazz have Rudy Gobert. We know they signed Derek Favors this offseason. They drafted Udoka as a Azubuike. We got a chance to talk to Dennis Lindsay today. We got a chance to talk to Justin Zanuck, who are kind of the brain trust of the Jazz. It's just kind of interesting what the Jazz are doing, Mitch. They're kind of bucking the trend of these teams that are trying to get more versatile, these teams that are trying to get big men who step out and shoot the three. Jazz are staying big. And one of the reasons they like that is because after December 23rd, almost a year ago now, it's crazy. That was the Dante Exum trade to get Jordan Clarkson. And when they waived Jeff Green and they signed Rajon Tucker, who's now out of the NBA, the Jazz had the best offense the rest of the season. Now, that didn't include the bubble, but then once they got to the playoffs, the Jazz had the best offense again in the postseason. And I think, Mitch, what they've realized is, hey, we've got a ton of scoring talent, but the defense really dropped off after going out and getting Bojan Bogdanovic and losing Ricky Rubio for Mike Conley. So the Jazz went back and just wanted to get bigger, and they think that Derek Favors adds that.
Yeah, that was a noticeable drop-off last year, at least, throughout the season, to see that defensive identity, which was kind of just so intertwined, it felt like, with Quinn Snyder Jazz teams, to not see that be as big of a strong suit. And now the bubble, I kind of take the bubble stats out of context. I mean, just because everyone seemed to have career nights in the bubble a little bit. But, I mean, do you feel like the way they've constructed this roster now, do you feel like they're in a position to, contend for the West? Because I feel like a year ago, that was the talk, was that the Jazz are going to be that next in line to take over post Golden State, to be the team to maybe win the West. And obviously that didn't work itself out, but do you think this retooling can give them a better chance to contend with the Lakers and the Warriors and all these teams out West?
Yeah, Mitch, it was funny, actually. That's what Dennis Lindsey brought up is he signaled out the Lakers. He said he thought the only time where the Jazz were truly outmatched last season was in that, I think it was December 4th. I mean, almost a year ago now, that matchup they had with the Lakers where LeBron just came in with Anthony Davis, and they just ran over the Jazz. Now, that was before the trade where they got Jordan Clarkson. That was before the moves they made where they kind of figured out their rotation. Mike Conley wasn't playing super well. And I think they felt like they had their identity after that, but he felt like the Jazz were outmatched because they could go big, whether it was with Dwight Howard or JaVale McGee, and then, of course, Anthony Davis. Now, Dwight's gone. We'll see what they're planning on doing with the rest of the team. I don't think JaVale's on the Lakers anymore either, is he?
Traded.
He got traded. Is he in the Knicks now, or is he Cleveland?
Gosh, I think it was Cleveland. I think it's where he ended up with Cleveland.
So they're not going to be as big next year. So we'll see if the Jazz end up kind of on a fool's errand here, trying to go big when even the Lakers started to go small. But the Jazz certainly believe that the offense is there, and I think the numbers bear that out. Now they want to make sure they have that defense for a full 48 minutes. I mean, I think they just looked at their second unit and realized, hey, we don't have anyone who can protect the rim for the good things that Tony Bradley could do, which was be big, kind of clog up the paint, grab some offensive rebounds. He really wasn't a great defensive player. He wasn't a rim protector by any stretch. So I think the Jazz are pretty happy with what they got in bringing Derek Favors back. And one of the things I thought was interesting, Mitch, as the Jazz seemed kind of antsy to move away from it, is that they're going to play Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert together in the lineup again. I don't think they're going to start. I think that's still Bojan Bogdanovic's job at the 4. I don't think they're going to push him down to the small forward position. But I think what they're going to try and do is get those guys on the floor for probably maybe 8 minutes a game, because you want to get Derek Favors 24 minutes a game. If Rudy plays 30 minutes at the center position, there's only 18 left as a backup. So Derek Favors takes those, gets another 8 minutes playing power forward, and the Jazz get him 24, 26 minutes that way. So I think that's what your rotation is going to look like. And then maybe you can get a few minutes for Udoka Azubuike. Probably not early, but we'll get to see him in the preseason. And Jazz fans, that's coming up on the 12th. So they are 2 weeks away now. I think it's a Saturday, a week from Saturday. The Jazz are going to be playing that same day. BYU's playing San Diego State. The Jazz are going to have their first preseason game. So it should be interesting. There's not going to be any fans there. I don't think they're going to have media at that first game, but the NBA season's back, and the preseason kind of, or I should say the training camp really kind of starts tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm excited for this season. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm curious too to see Ben. I mean, I know he doesn't fit into the size narrative, of course, because of his stature and position. But I mean, I'm just really intrigued to see what Mike Conley becomes in year 2, because I just thought he was going to be. I think everyone around the Jazz and Jazz fans everywhere just thought he was going to just be the perfect fit. What are you expecting from Conley in year 2?
Yeah, I think he really struggled out of the gate. He just done so much with Memphis. He had to unlearn so many things. I think that was a little bit more of a adjustment than I certainly expected. I think what a lot of Jazz fans expected also. But then he really seemed to click, getting away from the team, came back for the bubble, looked really good, left for the birth of his son, came back and then was absolutely fabulous during the playoffs. I know he missed the big shot and kind of had a bad game 7. But otherwise, he really was pretty terrific. I think that's what the Jazz are hoping for. He's not going to give you 20 points a game like he did in the bubble, but he needs to give you 14 points and shoot 45% from the floor and close to 40% from the three-point line. And if he can do that, he's really good. But he was so bad when Bojan Bogdanovic was on the floor last season, and those two just could not kind of figure out how to play together. I just think it was too much newness. So understanding this was a 2-year process, you had both of these guys signed up. I mean, Boyan signed for the next 3 seasons, but you had a 2-year audition with Mike Conley. I think they realized that, hey, first season they're going to work out the kinks. No one expected it to be as chaotic as it was. But then year 2, you come back ready to compete. And the Jazz bring back Derek Favors, and I think they're pretty comfortable with that roster.
And where do you think they sit? I mean, in the hierarchy of the Western Conference now, because I mean, I feel like the Lakers have gotten better with their roster. Clippers, I still think they should be top 3. I would expect. I know they were making a lot of excuses coming out with saying that they didn't have the chemistry together. That should be fixed, I would think, in year 2 with a new coaching staff. Where do the Jazz lie 2 weeks out from preseason?
I think you're right. I think the Lakers are still the champs, and they deserve that credit until they can be dethroned. So I think they're easily a top 1 or 2 seed. I do think losing Montrezl Harrell hurt the Clippers, but of course they went out and they got some replacements and they added some depth, and I think that's certainly going to help them so they can be really good again. They should be expected to be a top 2 or 3 team. There's no reason why the Jazz can't be in that mix. I mean, I think the Jazz leaped Denver. Denver had a really bad offseason. They lost a lot of talent. Especially in Jeremy Grant, who was maybe their most versatile front court player. They think they're really going to miss that. I think Dallas has a chance to take a leap forward, but that really depends on how healthy Kristaps Porzingis is. He's had knee surgery recently. So I think those are the question marks. But the Jazz are in that conversation. I think they should be right there again, 3, 4, 5. I don't think they'd probably get up to number 2, but they should be good. They should be competing for home court advantage in the first round. And then I think you hope that your matchups and your quality of play and Donovan Mitchell taking another step forward put you in a spot to compete to advance maybe to the Western Conference Finals. I think that's where the Jazz enter the season as what their target should be. You shouldn't be aiming any lower than that with the money you're spending with 2 guys on max contracts or pending max contracts. I think that's what the Jazz have to be hoping for.
And I'm excited to see too, what the Jazz will look like over the course of an entire season with limited fans. I know there's going to be what was the specific number again that they're going to have? 1,500? Yeah,
they'll start with 1,500 when the regular season starts on December 22nd. They're trying to ramp that up throughout the year.
Yeah, and I just think that because I always think with Jazz home games, I think back last year with the Bucks when Boyan hits that game winner, just the atmospheres are just electric, and even the best teams in this league can come into Salt Lake and stumble. I wonder how much of an impact that's going to have potentially on the Jazz record, because you just lose that just hostile, huge home environment that the Vivint Arena provides each and every year. That's going to be something that will be interesting throughout the entire league, as so many teams, some are not even having fans. I know the Lakers aren't having any until further notice. So it'll be interesting to see what this becomes throughout a whole course season. Hopefully we get a vaccine and it can be fixed. Right. We can get back to normal as soon as possible, but it's going to be another fascinating year of hoops coming up.
Yeah, Mitch, I think it's going to make it harder to defend home court, but that's going to apply across the league. So you're going to go in and you might beat the Lakers in Los Angeles in a game that you probably would have chalked up as a loss. I mean, the fans have an impact. I think we recognize that, and it's going to help you and hurt you throughout the year. All right, one last story really quick. This is chaos in Utah State. I mean, it went sour so absurdly quickly for a program that was on the rise, and the basketball team is doing well and has a very good coach. It seemed like, hey, Utah State athletics have really figured it out and can be a premier program with Boise State. I mean, it should have been those two, it felt like, at the top of the Mountain West Conference. And now the football team is it feels toxic to me. Do you feel that way?
I agree. I think Frank Maile, I think, has done a nice job to try to navigate it, and them getting that win against a winless New Mexico team. Like, that was, I thought, in that moment, just to get a win was quite the accomplishment for this interim staff and this team that's just been turned over in a hurry. But I think we've learned that Gary Anderson probably shouldn't be a head coach ever again. I mean, he's just left so many programs in shambles. Wisconsin was a mess. They're just fortunate they had a structure with Barry Alvarez that they were able to piece it together in a hurry. Oregon State's finally coming out of it with Jonathan Smith after that big win they had over the weekend against Oregon. But Utah State's going to take some time because, like you said, I mean, they were on the rise, and there was talks in the state, I think, from a lot of the fans, but I think people felt that maybe as Utah State closed the gap with BYU in terms of every single year you can compete and make that a back and forth rivalry, where that's the game in the state where it's more competitive each and every year. Because I think when you look on the outside looking in, BYU and Utah, Power 5 compared to non-Power 5 resources wise, BYU's at a huge disadvantage. But Utah State was kind of going blow for blow with BYU, and just to see this fall from 11-2 in 2018 to now, pretty surprising. And then to lose a guy like Jaylen Warren, who is a quality running back in this. I think the notion that just adding Power 5 talent, getting Jason Shelley's, getting Devontae Henry Coles, that's not always the answer, because it can maybe mess up chemistry. It can maybe mess up a locker room. And clearly, there's been so many issues in that football program right now that, I think there's probably can't wait for the day that the season probably ends and they could just go all in on a coaching search and find their next guy.
Yeah, I think we have to tip our cap to Matt Wells and how good of a job he did there. I think so many of us gave credit to Gary Anderson and kind of the lasting impact he had. Said, well, that's what Matt Wells is riding those coattails, and really Matt really took it to that next level. Ended up getting a job. Where was it? Texas Tech.
Yeah, Texas Tech. Mm-hmm.
And then Gary came back and it just didn't work out. But Mitch, to go from having a first-round draft pick at quarterback, what was that, March? Or April? I mean, when was April in the NFL draft, to firing your head coach, and now the big news today, Jaylen Warren entering the transfer portal, your leading running back. 8 months later, it's crazy how fast it can change, and it's why you have to appreciate good coaches while you have them in your grasp. Hey, yeah. Mitch at KSLSports.com. Just like me, you can find us on Twitter at Mitch_Harper, at Ben's Hoops, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4 o'clock. We do this. It's the KSL Sports front page. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll be back again on Wednesday.